He had everything: money, power, success. But in one single moment, one crash on the road to Onitsha, everything changed. 18 people died that day. Only one man survived, Emeka Obi. The same man who had once told God, "I will never pray again." But when he opened his eyes in the wreckage, surrounded by death, he realized the very God he abandoned was the one who had kept him alive. This is not just a story about loss. It's about pride, pain, and the mercy that waits for us even when we stop believing. So sit back and listen till the end. Hit that subscribe button, like, share, and tell me in the comments what lesson you're taking home today. Because by the time this story is done, you'll understand why nobody should ever step out without greeting heaven first. In the quiet town of Isioma, mornings began with the gentle hum of prayer. The air carried the scent of burning firewood, and the sound of women drawing water from the village well filled the dawn. Inside a small clay house with a rusted zinc roof, Mama Chioma Obi knelt beside her wooden bed, whispering softly, "Lord, guide my children today, keep them from the snares of the road." Her voice trembled with faith, the kind of faith only a woman who had tasted both love and loss could carry. Her son, Emeka, was her pride. Tall, bright-eyed, always the first in class. The villagers said, "Chioma, your son will eat with kings one day." But what they didn't know was that Mama Chioma had only one rule in her house: no one leaves this compound without praying first. Emeka grew up under that rule like a tree under sunlight. He learned early that prayer was not just routine, it was protection. As a little boy, he would kneel every morning beside his mother, eyes closed, whispering words he barely understood: "Father in heaven, keep me today." Those simple words became the rhythm of his youth. Even as he grew older, into a confident young man, the habit never left him. Every morning before stepping out, he would pause, bow his head, and say, "God, walk with me." Life was simple, faith was steady, and Mama Chioma believed her son would never forget. But life has a way of testing what we say we believe. The day Emeka Obi left Isioma, the whole village felt it. He was the first son of the late Mr. Obi, a schoolteacher who had died when Emeka was just 10. His mother, Mama Chioma, stood by the roadside, clutching his bag with trembling hands. Her wrapper was old but neat, her face lined with both pride and worry. "My son," she said softly, "remember where you came from. And remember, never leave your house in the morning without prayer." Emeka smiled, his young face glowing with excitement. "Mama, don't worry. I won't forget." She placed her hand on his head. "You will meet many people. Some will know God, some will not. Hold your faith tightly, like your breath." He nodded, hugged her, and climbed into the bus. As the engine roared to life, Mama Chioma raised her hand and whispered one last prayer into the wind: "Lord, keep him safe, in body and in spirit." The bus sped off toward Lagos, and Emeka leaned against the window, watching the hills of Isioma fade behind him. His heart pounded with hope. "This is it," he thought. "My time to make it." The city welcomed him with noise, horns blaring, voices shouting, markets buzzing. Everything moved fast, like the ground itself was alive. He rented a small room in a crowded neighborhood. It smelled of kerosene and sweat, but to Emeka, it was the beginning of his future. Every morning, he woke up before dawn, prayed briefly, and ran to his new job as a sales apprentice at a big electronics shop. He worked hard, learned quickly, and soon his boss began to trust him. Within 2 years, Emeka had risen from apprentice to supervisor. He never missed Sunday church. He even joined the choir. And every night, before he slept, he whispered, "Thank you, God, for another day." His mother's teachings were alive in him. He was doing well, both in faith and in life. But as his world grew larger, and money began to flow, something else began to change. It started slowly, a missed prayer here, a forgotten devotion there. Then came new friends, men who laughed at early morning prayers, who said, "My brother, prayer is for people who have no plan. Hustle first, pray later." And Emeka listened. He didn't know it yet, but the city that had given him wings was also quietly teaching him how to fall. Lagos had become Emeka's new world. 3 years after he left Isioma, the boy who once carried his mother's old Bible now carried a leather briefcase. His shirt was always crisp, his shoes shined like mirrors, and his phone never stopped ringing. Business was booming. He had become one of the most trusted distributors in the electronics market at Alaba. Money was flowing, and with it came new faces, traders, friends, admirers, even people who had once ignored him. One of them was Ngozi, a calm, graceful woman who worked in a bank nearby. She had a soft laugh, intelligent eyes, and a voice that could quiet Emeka's busiest days. Their paths crossed when he went to deposit money. A conversation began, one visit turned into two, then into dinner, and before long, Emeka was in love. In Ngozi, he saw peace, and the family he longed to build. They married within a year. The wedding was beautiful, church bells, bright colors, and joy that filled the air like perfume. Even Mama Chioma came from the village, tears of joy streaming down her face as she danced. God has remembered my son, she said, smiling wide. For a while, life was perfect. Emeka and Ngozi prayed together every morning. They had 2 children, opened a bigger store, and bought a house on the mainland. People pointed at him and said, that man is blessed. But success, like a slow tide, began to pull him further away from the shore he started on. He began to travel more. Early prayers became rushed, then forgotten. Sunday services turned into, maybe next week. When Mama Chioma called, reminding him to pray, he would laugh. Mama, relax. God knows I'm busy trying to survive in this Lagos. Sometimes he even felt proud of how far he'd come by his own effort. His friend Chidi, who had no interest in religion, became his closest companion. One evening over drinks, Chidi chuckled and said, my guy, you still dey pray. Look around you, we are the ones making things happen. No spirits, no prayers, just hustle. Emeka laughed. My mother won't like that talk, he replied. Forget your mother, Chidi said. She prayed for you to succeed, right? You succeeded. Mission accomplished. The words sank deep. That night, Emeka sat in his car for a long time, staring at the city lights. For the first time, he didn't whisper a prayer before driving home. It felt strange, but it also felt easy. He didn't know that the ease was the beginning of distance, and distance was the beginning of loss. In the months that followed, Emeka's business grew even more. He opened a second branch. Life was loud, bright, and full of motion. But in all the noise, one thing was quietly disappearing, his peace. Life rarely announces when the storm is coming. It creeps in softly, like a whisper that becomes thunder. For Emeka and Ngozi, everything seemed fine. Their home was warm, their children healthy, and their love strong. But one evening, after dinner, Ngozi coughed, just once, lightly. Emeka smiled and teased, you and this cold again. She laughed it off, saying she was fine. But by the next week, the cough had worsened. Her laughter was weaker. The spark in her eyes dimmed. They visited the hospital. Tests were done. Then came the diagnosis, cancer. The word hit like a slap across Emeka's face. He stared at the doctor, unable to breathe. It can't be, he whispered. For a moment, everything he had built, money, business, reputation, felt meaningless. He clutched Ngozi's hand as she smiled faintly, trying to comfort him. We'll be fine, she said. We just need to pray. The word, pray, struck deep. It had been months, maybe years, since he had truly prayed. But now, faced with losing the woman who was his heartbeat, he found himself kneeling again. Night after night, he prayed. He called pastors. He sowed seeds. He fasted. Pastor Dan, his old mentor from his village church, came to visit. Emeka, he said softly, sometimes God doesn't move to test our faith, he moves to reveal it. Emeka nodded, but his eyes were tired. He wanted miracles, not sermons. Months passed. Ngozi's condition worsened. The hair she once played with fell away. Her voice grew faint. One night, Emeka sat beside her bed in the hospital, holding her frail hand. The room was quiet except for the soft beeping of a monitor. Ngozi, he whispered, Please, don't leave me. I give up everything, the business, the cars, everything. Just stay. She smiled weakly. Emeka, remember what your mother taught you. God is not finished, even when it looks like the end. He pressed her hand to his lips, tears running down his face. But by morning, she was gone. Just like that, the laughter, the light, the heartbeat of his word, was gone. Emeka sat frozen. The nurses moved quietly around him. The doctor murmured condolences. But he heard nothing. Inside him, something shattered, something he wasn't sure could ever heal. That evening, when Mama Chioma called, he could barely speak. Mama, he whispered, God has failed me. She wept on the phone. My son, don't speak like that. But he did not listen. If he could take her, Emeka said bitterly, then he is no different from the silence I've been living in. That night, he closed his Bible, placed it in a drawer, and told himself he would never open it again. Days turned into weeks. Emeka buried Ngozi, and with her, he buried his faith. He stopped attending church. He stopped praying. He stopped believing. His business grew even bigger, but his soul became emptier. And for the first time, the man who once started every morning with prayer now woke up to nothing but noise. Time moved on. 3 years had passed since Ngozi's death. To the world, Emeka Obi was still a man to envy, a self-made businessman with branches in Lagos, Port Harcourt, and Abuja. His name opened doors. His bank account was fat. His face was on the front page of a business magazine once, with the headline, From Grass to Glory, the man who built an empire. But glory is a strange thing. It shines on the outside while leaving the inside dark. At home, Emeka was alone. The walls of his mansion were silent. The laughter of children had become echoes of memory. He ate dinner in silence, often staring at the chair where Ngozi used to sit. Sometimes he left the television on just to fill the emptiness. He worked from morning till night, business meetings, contracts, deals. The busier he became, the more restless he felt. When sleep wouldn't come, he poured himself a drink. When the memories came, he poured another. Chidi, his old friend, was still around. They spent nights at expensive lounges, laughing loudly, surrounded by people who called them chairman. But when the laughter faded and the night grew quiet, Emeka would sit in his car and stare at nothing. He had everything, and yet, nothing. One night, after a long party, Chidi turned to him and said, "My brother, you're living the dream. Money, freedom, what else do you need?" Emeka smiled faintly. "Sleep," he said. Even in dreams, he found no rest. He dreamed of Ngozi's face, of his mother's voice calling him to pray, of a small boy kneeling beside a clay bed in Isioma, whispering, "Father in heaven, keep me today." Each time he woke up, there was a heaviness in his chest, a weight he could not name. One Sunday morning, as he drove past a church, he slowed down. The sound of singing poured out, rich and full. For a moment, he almost parked. Almost. Then he shook his head. "What's the point?" he muttered, pressing the accelerator. The church disappeared in the rearview mirror, like a door closing. That afternoon, he called Mama Chioma. Her voice was older, weaker now. But her faith was still strong. "My son," she said, "I've been praying for you. Are you praying too?" He laughed bitterly. "Mama, I stopped praying long ago. God stopped listening before I stopped talking." There was silence on the line. Then her voice came softly, "Emeka, even when a child runs away, his mother's prayers still follow his shadow." He said nothing. He just ended the call, sat in his car, and stared out at the city skyline. Somewhere deep inside, a small voice whispered, "You used to pray before you stepped out." But he ignored it. And so, the silence continued, day after day, year after year. Until one day, the silence broke, not with words, but with fire and metal. It was a Friday morning in March. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky with strokes of gold. Emeka Obi stood at the Jibowu Motor Park, holding a small travel bag. He was heading to Onitsha for a business deal, a multi-millionaire contract that could expand his company beyond anything he'd ever imagined. The air was full of noise, conductors shouting, engines revving, hawkers calling out, "Gala! Cold water! La Casera!" Emeka's driver had offered to take him in his private car, but he refused. "No need," he said. "Let me travel like a normal person today." He boarded a commercial bus, an 18-seater, old but steady, and took the second seat from the window. Around him were strangers, a young mother with her baby, a student with earphones, two elderly men talking about politics, a trader carrying a big bag of onions. The driver shouted, "Enter! Enter! Last two seats." When the bus finally filled, the conductor closed the door with a loud bang. "Make we pray, oh," someone called out from the back. The passengers bowed their heads. The young man beside Emeka muttered a short prayer, "Lord, take us and bring us back safely." Emeka sat still. For the first time in years, he heard people praying, words he used to say so easily. He almost joined in, but stopped himself. "God left me a long time ago," he thought quietly. The driver started the engine. The bus pulled out of Lagos, joining the highway, moving fast, laughter, small talk, gospel music playing from someone's phone. Hours passed. The road stretched ahead, wide and endless. Somewhere near or, the bus slowed down, traffic. The sun was blazing now. Emeka leaned his head against the window, half asleep. Then suddenly, a loud bang. The bus jerked violently to the side. People screamed. A tire had burst. The driver tried to control the wheel, but the speed was too much. The bus swerved, hit the barrier, flipped once, twice, then crashed into the ditch. Screams. Silence. Dust. The smell of fuel. When Emeka opened his eyes, everything was quiet. Too quiet. His head throbbed. His hands shook. He looked around, the bus was in pieces. Bodies everywhere. The young mother and her baby, still. The student, silent. The driver, gone. Everyone. Every single person on that bus, gone. Except him. He touched his face. Blood. His legs trembled as he crawled out through the shattered window. The world around him was chaos, smoke, shouting, people gathering, sirens in the distance. But Emeka stood there, unbroken. Not a single bone fractured. Not a single wound deep enough to take his life. He fell to his knees on the roadside, shaking. And for the first time in years, words formed on his lips without effort. "God, why me?" Tears flooded his eyes. "After all the years I turned away, after all the things I said, why me?" There was no answer. Just the whisper of the wind, carrying the smell of dust and smoke, and grace. He wept openly, surrounded by death but kept alive. Somewhere deep inside him, he felt it, the old rhythm, the small voice, the faith that had been buried under pain. It came back softly, like a mother's song. "No one leaves this house without greeting heaven first." Emeka bowed his head to the ground and prayed, really prayed, for the first time in years. "Lord, forgive me. Thank you for keeping me. I'm yours again." The road to Isioma had not changed much. The same red earth. The same palm trees leaning into the wind. It had been almost 15 years since Emeka Obi left home, 15 years since he last walked that road with his mother's voice echoing behind him. But this time, he was not the same man. The accident had shaken him to his bones. The image of that broken bus haunted his sleep. The faces of those who died replayed in his mind again and again. He couldn't explain it, how he, the one who had turned his back on God, had walked away with nothing more than scratches. Every breath since that day felt borrowed. So one Sunday morning, he packed a small bag and told his driver, "Take me home." The journey was long and quiet. He watched the landscape change, city buildings fading into open fields, noise giving way to silence. When he reached Isioma, the villagers recognized him instantly. "Emeka Obi," they shouted. "The son of Mama Chioma. The one who made it in Lagos." He smiled faintly, waving, but his heart was heavy. When he reached the compound, he saw his mother sitting under the old mango tree, her Bible open on her lap. Her hair was grayer now. Her back slightly bent. But her spirit, it was still bright. When she saw him, she froze for a moment, then stood slowly, tears filling her eyes. Emeka. Mama. He dropped his bag and ran to her. She hugged him tight, the kind of embrace that could melt years of silence. They stood there for a long time, no words, just the sound of wind and home. Finally, she pulled back and looked at him. I've been praying for you every day, she said. He smiled through tears. Mama, your prayers followed me. Even when I ran away. She looked at him carefully. You look thinner. What happened? He hesitated, then said quietly, Mama, I saw death, and I saw God. On the same road. She held his hand and led him inside. Tell me everything. He did. From the business trip to the crash, to waking up among the dead, to the moment he prayed again after years of silence. Mama Chioma listened without interrupting, tears streaming down her face. When he finished, she lifted her hands to the sky and whispered, I told you, Lord, my son will return. Emeka knelt before her, holding her knees. Mama, teach me again how to greet heaven. She smiled through her tears. It's simple, my son. You start by saying, thank you. The rest will follow. That evening, mother and son prayed together, just like they used to, years ago in that same small room, under the same flickering lantern light. The prayer was short, but in that moment, the air felt full again. Peace, quiet, real peace, returned. And for the first time in a long time, when Emeka closed his eyes, he slept without fear. In the weeks that followed, Isioma became Emeka's healing ground. He woke up early each morning to the sound of birds and his mother's faint singing. She would sit by the window, Bible open, whispering prayers into the dawn. At first, he just listened. Then one morning, he joined her. The words didn't come easily at first, his voice broke, his heart still raw, but slowly, the rhythm returned. It was like learning how to breathe again. Thank you for today, he would say. Thank you for sparing me. After breakfast, he began visiting the village. He repaired the old borehole that had stopped working years ago. He sponsored school uniforms for the children. He helped the local church rebuild its broken roof. People began to whisper, Emeka has changed. The same man who once lived for business now lived for kindness. But he didn't do it for recognition. He did it because every time he helped someone, it felt like one more stone lifted from his heart. One afternoon, as he helped an old widow fix her leaking roof, she said quietly, I heard about the accident, my son. You must have cried that day. He smiled faintly. Yes, Mama. But those tears washed something away, my pride. That night, he sat under the mango tree with his mother, watching the moon rise. Mama, he said softly, do you think God really forgives? She turned to him. Forgiveness is not what God does sometimes, my son. It's who He is. Her words sank deep into him like roots into soil. As days turned into months, Emeka began to travel again, but this time not for business. He started speaking at churches, telling his story. People listened, many with tears in their eyes. He would say, I had everything, money, status, comfort, but I lost the one thing that gave it meaning, peace. I thought prayer was a habit, I didn't know it was air. When I stopped praying, I stopped breathing. And when I almost died, God gave me another chance to exhale. Everywhere he went, people came to him afterward, sharing their own stories, losses, doubts, moments when they too stopped believing. He would smile and say, don't wait for a storm before you remember who holds the umbrella. Emeka became known not as the businessman from Lagos, but as the man who came back from silence. Even Chidi, his old friend from Lagos, called one day. My guy, Chidi said, his voice low, I heard what happened. I don't pray, but I think I should start. Emeka smiled. Start small. Just say, thank you. That's how I began again. And that night, As he lay under the soft hum of the ceiling fan, Emeka whispered a prayer he hadn't said since his childhood. Father, before I step out tomorrow, walk before me. He didn't know what tomorrow held, but he had learned something deeper. When you pray before stepping out, you're not just asking for safety. You're reminding yourself who holds your day. And this time, he would never forget again. 2 years passed since Emeka Obi returned to Isioma. The man who once ran from God now walked hand in hand with grace. His mornings began with quiet prayer under the mango tree, the same spot where his mother used to sit and wait for him to come home. Every sunrise felt like a new covenant. Thank you for this day, he would whisper, eyes closed. Use me to heal someone else's pain. Word of his transformation spread beyond the village. Pastors invited him to speak. Communities called him to share his story. At first, he hesitated. I'm not a preacher, he told his mother. She smiled gently. You don't need a pulpit to preach, my son. Sometimes your life is the sermon. So he went to schools, churches, town halls, even marketplaces. Everywhere he stood, people listened. He told them about success that made him proud, and loss that made him human. About anger that blinded him, and mercy that found him. His voice was calm but full, like someone who had walked through fire and come out with a torch. One Sunday, he spoke at a youth conference in Owerri. The hall was packed, hundreds of young faces, eyes bright, some bored, some curious. Emeka stood there, looked at them for a moment, and said quietly, I know what it feels like to think you don't need prayer. I thought prayer was old-fashioned, something for the weak or afraid. But I've learned that prayer isn't a spare tire for emergencies, it's the engine oil that keeps life moving. The hall fell silent. You could almost hear the weight of those words settling into hearts. After he spoke, a young woman came to him in tears. Sir, she said, I stopped praying when I lost my father. I thought God didn't care. But now I know. He was still there. Emeka smiled softly. He never left you, he said. Sometimes pain is not God's absence, it's his way of getting our attention. From that day, people began to write him letters. One from Lagos said, Your story made me kneel again for the first time in 10 years. Another from Abuja read, I prayed before work today, not because I was in trouble, but because I wanted to say thank you. Even Chidi, the man who once mocked prayer, began sending him Bible verses every morning. Can you imagine? Emeka laughed one day. The man who told me to forget God is now reminding me to read Psalms. His mother smiled. That's how grace echoes, my son, from one life to another. Soon, a local TV station heard of his story and invited him for an interview. The host asked, Mr. Obi, what would you say is the greatest lesson life has taught you? Emeka paused, then said slowly, that prayer doesn't keep bad things from happening, it keeps you from breaking when they do. The interview went viral. Thousands watched, shared, commented. Some called him the man who lived. Others said, he is proof that God still speaks. But for Emeka, the glory wasn't in fame. It was in the small things, the old women who prayed again, the children who now knelt before school, the bus drivers who crossed themselves before turning the ignition. He saw bits of his story replaying in others, like ripples on a still river. And every night, before closing his eyes, he whispered the same words that once began his mornings as a boy in Isioma. Father, thank you for today. Tomorrow, walk before me. And in heaven's quiet reply, grace kept echoing, one life, one prayer, one miracle at a time. Years had passed. The man who once chased money now chased meaning. Emeka Obi had become something he never planned to be, a voice of quiet faith for people who had lost their way. His story, from success to sorrow, from silence to salvation, had touched lives far beyond Isioma. But for him, it was never about fame. It was about gratitude. On a warm Saturday morning, he sat by the window of his home, now rebuilt beside the old mango tree. His mother had gone to be with the Lord a year earlier, peacefully, in her sleep, Bible still open on her chest. Sometimes, when the wind blew through the branches, Emeka swore he could still hear her humming those old hymns. That morning, as the rain slowed, he picked up his one Bible. It was the same one his mother had given him decades ago, pages brown, corners bent, the scent of time still fresh. On the first page, written in her careful handwriting, were the words, "Never step out without greeting heaven." He smiled. That line had carried him through fire, through loss, through redemption. It wasn't superstition, it was truth. Prayer wasn't magic. It didn't promise a life without storms. It only reminded him who calmed them. That afternoon, he was invited to speak one last time, at a memorial service for victims of a road accident. As he stood on the stage, facing the crowd, families who had lost loved ones, people holding pictures of those gone too soon, he took a deep breath. He looked up, as if speaking to heaven. "I once thought success was proof of God's love," he began. "Then I thought loss was proof of His absence. But I've learned that God is in both, the laughter and the pain, the rise and the fall. Prayer doesn't stop the rain, it teaches you how to dance in it." The hall was silent. Even the air felt still, like it was listening. He continued, his voice low but firm. "When I stopped praying, I stopped seeing. I walked blind into days that were not mine to control. But on a road to Onitsha, God reminded me, every day you wake up is a borrowed gift, and prayer is the thank you note." He paused, his eyes glistening. "So, before you step out of your house tomorrow, stop. Not to ask for things. Not to list your fears. Just to say, thank you for trusting me with another day. Because you never know what road lies ahead." The crowd rose to their feet, some crying, some whispering amen. As he stepped down, the rain outside had stopped completely. The sun broke through the clouds, bright, warm, forgiving. Emeka stood by the window, feeling its heat on his face. He smiled softly and whispered, "Thank you, Lord. I'm still here." And with that, the man who once forgot prayer became the man whose every breath was one. Because some days, the only thing standing between life and loss is a prayer whispered before you step out. If you made it to this part, you're a real one. Thank you for watching this story to the end. I hope it spoke to your heart. Do me one favor before you go, hit that subscribe button, like, share, and tell me in the comments what lesson you're taking home today. Your engagement means a lot. It helps more people hear stories that heal, inspire, and remind us of what really matters. God bless you, and remember, before you step out tomorrow, say a prayer.